sometimes I open really special wines. Like, for example, I purchased a bottle of 2011 Petrus and tasted it on my channel. That was like $3,000. And it was kind of special tasting that wine. But in the end, I still had to give it an honest review.
You're listening to the Vint Podcast, bringing you expert interviews, alternative market insights, and exclusive access to the world of wine and spirits investing. Enjoy the show.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Vint Podcast. My name is Brady, joined as always in studio by Billy Galanko, coming to us from sunny Philadelphia.
Yep, another weather anomaly here. We're still living in basically Seattle with 2 atmospheric rivers in the past week, so it's been wet.
Yeah, I didn't know what an atmospheric river was until we did our third take of this intro. And I now know that it is a weather phenomenon impacting California and not impacting Maryland.
Yeah, we've had, I think this is number 11. We had 9 early in the year, and now this one.
Yeah, nice. Well, you guys have had more snow than we have. It snowed for the first time last night, and it is all gone. It was just sitting on the car. So.
Oh, that's still fun. But yeah, no, it's not been all gloom and doom here. I have been on a little Italian wine kick for the past week. I think I had 4 or 5 different Sicilian wines, and we tried out a new Italian-based like wine bar. I had some kind of obscure varieties from Tuscany, like Piedroso, which means like red foot, because the stem to the grape is actually red. So that was cool. Got to do a couple other like little tastings there, so that was fun. You been drinking anything interesting?
Honestly, not drinking a ton of wine the last couple of weeks, drinking more whiskey. And obviously when we were in Kentucky, we were drinking whiskey. But we have been talking offline, you and I, a good bit about German wines, which kind of fits with our episode today because we have Konstantin Baum, who is a German master of wine and YouTuber, prominent wine YouTuber, who we have on the podcast today. Really great conversation. And we do touch on some German wines. But that's, in terms of my purchasing habits, that's why I've been looking at more these days, some German Rieslings and such. So, yeah.
Yeah, and we'll get into it, but he's the youngest German master of wine, both when he passed and still today. That's wild.
That's right, yeah. Yeah, so to our German listeners, get out there and set a new record.
Anybody under 40, basically.
That's right, yeah. Yeah, we also have, aside from the interview that we'll get to later on, we do have a few updates on collections that sold out since the last podcast. We did sort of that emergency podcast last week on our 100-acre vertical collection, which sold out very quickly over the weekend. And we also sold out another whiskey offering. That's our Macallan Exceptional Cask Collection, which was one of our older Macallans that we've launched to date. It's a 67-year-old Macallan bottling, which is, in terms of the age statements that we've had on the platform, is right up there with the 70s and 78-year Macallan. So, yeah, really great collections. Obviously, the 100-acre offering, which you guys heard about on our last podcast episode, these kind of direct from producer relationships are really important to us, and it was exciting to be able to bring 100-acre on to be able to offer those excellent wines from Napa Valley. So, lots more to come. Certainly, as we've mentioned in the past, more wine and whiskey to come, including cask whiskey on the horizon. We do have some Japanese cask whiskey upcoming, so we'll share more details on that in the future. Don't want to tease too much of it, but that's kind of the lay of the land, Vint-wise.
Yeah, no, it's been really exciting since we've launched collections again in mid-February. I think we've sold over $1 million of shares, which has been really exciting. We're happy to see the pent-up demand in our strong community. So it's been an exciting little less than a month now. So we're excited to get back on the collections. But yeah, to our guest today, Konstantin Baum, he was really interesting. This is somebody that I've actually known about for years and been in contact with, but Brady was able to actually get him on the podcast, and he has over 100,000 followers on YouTube. He's one of the biggest wine YouTubers in the world. And part of that, and Brady, you can definitely chime in here in a second, is he's just very approachable. He has this immense knowledge, being the youngest master of wine in the world. He runs his own wine shop, but he also can talk to wine, in a very approachable manner. He drinks everything from 150-year-old wines to pet nats, the natural wines that were made, just yesterday. So it's really interesting for him to be able to break them down. He talks through the wines in a really easy and understandable manner and helps teach you along the way. So I thought his content is really, really interesting.
Yeah, and I like his approach, given that, I think when he's reviewing wines, he tends to be super unbiased. I think he mentions on the podcast that when he's doing reviews, he always tries to purchase the wines himself that he's bringing, to the channel. So obviously, I'm sure he's making money off of advertisers and other things through YouTube that help to fund that. But I think it's good that he's continuing to roll those funds back into purchases. And he's not, some of these critics and reviewers and even content creators are sort of bought in one way or another by these brands. And so I think he does a really good job at staying neutral when he does those reviews. And then otherwise just providing really clear content that's both helpful and like a layer deeper for folks that want to learn more.
And the other part that I liked that he mentions, and he'll go into how he rates wines. If you watch a couple episodes, you can kind of get a sense of what he's looking for in a quote unquote good wine. But he was able to talk about how he can separate the wine that's actually in the bottle from maybe the label or the experience. So he might be drinking like some really famous producer, which he talks about in the podcast. And then, he can say the wine was X, but the overall experience was, a 100-point experience just because of how special the wine was, regardless of how it tastes. So I thought that was really interesting. I also like how he worked at Liv-ex in the past too. So he really understands every aspect of the wine world from, investment side, retail side, producer side. He's able to kind of give you that well-rounded kind of feel.
Definitely. Yeah, I appreciate you don't often meet, I feel like we haven't often met people who have such an appreciation for every aspect of the industry, from kind of the consumer, like bottom shelf side, all the way to the investment grade side, like the financial aspect and like the business of wine, which he also has, I think, an affinity for. And he obviously shows that in his retail business, where he's bringing in really awesome wines from around Europe and France especially, and being able to distribute some of those in Germany. I think that, he has great coverage over the industry, provides a lot of really interesting insight and information, and obviously his YouTube is a wealth of additional knowledge and content, which our listeners can go check out. So thanks, guys, for tuning in for another episode. Here is our conversation with Konstantin Baum.
All right, we're here with Konstantin Baum, master of wine, YouTube extraordinaire, and wine retailer. Thank you so much for joining today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So I want to dive in about, learn a little bit about how you got into wine, became an MW. But before that, I wanted to touch on a couple of my little favorite notes from watching your videos for a long time now. One, I love how you'll taste wines across the spectrum. You'll taste, really old classic wines. You'll taste current vintage classic wines, but you also dive into like recently like hybrids and pet nats as well. Along the way there, you're very candid with everything that you're analyzing. Even if it's a great producer, you'll give your thoughts. If it's an unknown producer, you'll give your same thoughts. How has that candor helped you kind of gain a following? And have you ever like pissed off, some producer and they've like called you and been like, that was really mean. This is a great wine.
Well, no one has called me yet, but I'm pretty sure that some people might not have liked the way I talked about their wines, and I can understand that. I mean, like if you make a wine, it's a bit like having a child, and if someone poo-poos it, then that doesn't feel good. But I think it was really important, in my opinion, for me to grow an audience. I really needed to be direct and honest, but also not trying to milk it, not trying to hurt winemakers' feelings just because I thought that might might be great content if I go, well, this is absolute terrible wine. So I think that's really important. I think for me personally, it's really important to stay independent and be able to, well, really be honest about the wines in front of me. That's why I'll purchase pretty much all of the wines that I review on the channel, and I'm always kind of trying to stay away from getting too close to the producers. I don't really have a lot of friends who make wine. I like to stay a little bit separate in order to stay independent.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I really like your comparison to a child or somebody's kid, because I did the same thing. I worked at Harvest in Australia. I think people on our podcast have heard this. And I lived with a Dutch guy, and we used to go tasting together. And he would have candor with the winemakers as we've been tasting, but he would just be very mean about it. He'd be like, "This wine is not good," but he had no background to say that. So I had to explain to him it's like a child, and you wouldn't just go tell your friend their kid's ugly, even if it is. So great analogy there. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, it just well, you have to be aware of the fact that your words mean something, and you shouldn't shy away from honest criticism, but you don't have to be hurtful. You don't have to try to make people feel bad about the product that they poured so much time and effort into making. But sometimes it's also really separate. I mean, you have to separate yourself from the occasion as well. Like sometimes I open really special wines. Like, for example, I purchased a bottle of 2011 Petrus and tasted it on my channel. That was like $3,000. And it was kind of special tasting that wine. But in the end, I still had to give it an honest review. And even though it got a pretty good review, I think I gave it 93 points or something like that. That's obviously, well, in no relation to the price and the event of being able to opening a bottle like that and eating it with a steak and truffles. So the event was like a 100-point event, but the wine wasn't a 100-point wine. So sometimes you just have to separate yourself from that.
Yeah.
You say that, your words carry a lot of weight, and you have to sort of maybe watch what you say and how you say it. And I think part of the reason for that, right, is because obviously your experience and expertise, but you're also the youngest ever to achieve the Master of Wine, youngest German to achieve the title of Master of Wine. And so that credentialing certainly carries some weight, I would think. Especially, as you have such a reach in your YouTube community. How did you kind of get to that place? What was your sort of trajectory in wine to now doing the content that you're doing?
Well, from the very beginning, or from the beginning of my channel?
From before your wine days into wine, and then
into wine. Okay, well, it started around about 20 years ago now. So I got into wine quite early, I would say. Back in the days, I wanted to become the manager of a fancy hotel. And the way it works in Germany is that you do an apprenticeship for 3 years to learn the craft and study hospitality. And then you move on to go to university and study hospitality there. And I really started falling in love right from the start of my apprenticeship. I had great teachers who helped me a lot, and I then started to buy all of the books that were available and that I could afford to buy, and went to more and more tastings. And the sommelier noticed that and took me along to tastings, and at some point also allowed me to run the floor when he wasn't there. So I was basically working as a sommelier pretty early on. And that was really formative. But during that process, I realized that I don't necessarily want to become a hotel manager anymore. I wanted to do something in wine, but I didn't really know what exactly that would look like, because I am from a city in the north of Germany. There's no winemaking there. There's also not a lot of great wine culture in Bielefeld, my hometown. So I didn't really know what the trajectory could be like, but I just kind of thought I'll stick to the topic, and then things will develop. And so after the apprenticeship, I worked at a 2-star Michelin restaurant in Ireland, Restaurant Patrick Guibault. I think it's still the only 2-star Michelin restaurant that Ireland ever had. Don't quote me on that, but it's a nice place. And they had a great wine list. We had lots of amazing customers there, like Bono and The Edge from U2 came there frequently when they weren't on tour. And back in that period, there was also lots of money in Ireland. That was kind of the time of the Celtic Tiger. So everyone had money, and the Irish, they like to drink too. They like to celebrate life. So they were really going for it, and it was a big restaurant considering that it's like a 2-star Michelin restaurant. But we had lots, like 100 covers in one service sometimes, and people were spending 15,000, 20,000 euros on wine per service, like in the high time. So I got to taste lots of really exciting wines, but I also realized that maybe working in a restaurant is not that's not where my future is, and then I kind of thought about where to go, and I already heard a little bit about the MW back then, but I didn't feel ready for that. I was like in my early 20s, and I just didn't think I had everything I needed in order to start the program. So I worked a little bit in New Zealand at a winery, made some wine there, and then studied enology and business in the Rheingau region in Germany, Geisenheim. That's kind of our university for that. It's the UC Davis for wine in Germany. And after that, I moved to London and started the MW and started working for a company called Liv-ex, which you will know, and probably most of your listeners will know as well. It's not always the case that people know it because it's kind of not a customer facing business, but yeah, an exchange in fine wines. But that was also the period when I really went very deep into wine. Learned a lot, especially when it came to tasting. I had a very good scientific background after my studies at university, but like getting really deep into tasting those wines, identifying them blind, that was something that I learned a lot about during my Master of Wine days, and that was also kind of the period when I started to realize that I am not really employable. I'm not a person who can work for a company. I kind of need to do my own thing in order to really be happy. I quite like entrepreneurship, and I really I look up to people who build businesses. And I think there are not too many entrepreneurs in the wine world, and there's so much that you can do better or different in wine. It's quite a traditional business, so it's interesting to see what ways there are in order to make wine better, make it more interesting to people. My mission in life is to make the world taste better, and that's kind of everything I do is basically around that, educating people in order to understand wine better and bringing the right wines to the markets where I'm working. So that's that started forming during my time in London, and then I moved back to Germany. My wife is from a little town called Baden-Baden, a pretty little place with spas and stuff. So we came back here, and that's basically when I started my business. I now basically have two businesses. One is Baum Selection, an online retail company, and the other one is a communication agency. And that for that I basically speak a lot. I run seminars all around Europe, mainly on wine, different aspects of wine. And 3 years ago, there was this funny little period when we all were stuck in our homes, and I kind of thought, well, I normally travel a lot. It's like 50% of the of my time I'm on the road, And during that period, I kind of thought, well, I always wanted to do this YouTube thing, and now this is the perfect opportunity. I have some time to spare, and that's kind of when my channel started developing. And it obviously was a slow climb. YouTube, well, you can go viral with your first video and then develop a huge following, but I think it's much healthier to grow it organically. So I basically it started slow. And it's still not like in the YouTube sphere, it's still not a huge channel, but I think it's now one of the biggest channels in the world for wine. And that also, again, fits really well into my mission. I mean, making the world taste better. I think my viewers, the people who follow me around, they learn how to approach wine. They might be inspired to taste different wines. I might be able to guide them to the right wines. And the great thing about social media and YouTube in particular is that it has such a wide reach. You can really touch people through the camera. And no one, including me, expected that it will grow to that size, but now I kind of hope that I can grow it even further in order to reach even more people.
Yeah, I definitely think you can. One thing that I really like on your channel, and I'd like to hear a little bit more about how you approach it, is you break down wines in ways that are approachable. So like when I'm watching with my girlfriend, she can understand what you're talking about. That said, she has a little bit of me talking at her all the time. But as somebody who's wrapping up their diploma and hopefully maybe applying to the MW program someday, you also describe the structural terms in an interesting way as well. How do you straddle that line of being able to describe and educate people on what they should be looking for in a quote unquote like well-made wine versus also, making sure they understand what you're talking about?
It's kind of weird because I didn't really have a strategy in the beginning. It kind of sort of developed over time. But I just recently was in Paris and met up with a former world champion of sommeliers who told me that he really likes my videos. And then there are people on my channel who ask me questions in the comments where kind of know straight away that they are not deep into wine. They're just starting out. So I think that's probably the reason why the channel is doing so well, because it's not limited to one segment. And I think many people, when it comes to online communication about wine, make the mistake that they think they have to dumb it down a lot in order to attract an audience, like reach a wide audience. But I think for this kind of information, like the dumbed down version, those people probably don't want to watch like a 15-minute YouTube video every week. They might be interested like in a snippet of information and then that's it. So those people you won't reach with those dumbed down videos. And the people who are into wine, they will go, well, I know all that already. I've like done my level 1 sommelier or WSET or whatever. So that's not relevant to me, not interesting. So I'll try to I try to go into specific areas and talk about topics that I'm interested in, but I'm trying to keep it approachable, not use too much crazy language that people don't understand. I think in that case, it actually helps that I'm not a native speaker, because my vocabulary is limited anyways. So I can't talk. I'm not using sophisticated words anyways. But yeah, I try to keep it engaging for people who are into wine, but I'm not excluding the people who don't know much about wine either. But everyone who watches, I believe at least, everyone who watches has an interest in wine that is strong enough that they will also sometimes endure like a video on hybrids where they kind of go, what the, I don't even know more than 5 grape varieties. No, he's talking about hybrids. I have no idea what he's talking about. So yeah, I'm not being too strategic about it. It just kind of develops. It's the same the selection of the topics that I'm talking about. People obviously all the time send me suggestions, and I kind of filter through that. And sometimes there are some nuggets in there, but I also just follow what I'm kind of interested in, and sometimes ideas just pop into my head, and I kind of go, well, that's a really cool topic for a video. And if that video doesn't do well, then that's fine too, because I at least kind of made something that I think is worth watching. And if people don't agree, then I'm not too bothered about it.
And I think that you have a little bit of a leg up as well, because the production quality of your videos is so high, I've seen. And I think that the content is just really appealing from like a visual perspective. I think the way that you introduce topics is really appealing, even for someone who maybe like isn't in wine and just stumbles across it through the algorithm. I mean, this has happened for me, and I don't know, maybe the tech space, which I don't watch a lot of tech videos, but if someone shoots a really interesting, review of a new laptop, you can kind of get sucked in, and then you start to follow the character. And how often do you find that you have listeners who weren't looking for wine or outside of wine, but kind of get sucked into what you're doing? And was there a lot of intentionality behind sort of the aesthetic and the approach and all that?
I think I have, I'm interested in arts, and I sometimes think a lot about how things are supposed to look, but I'm not I learned everything by doing when it comes to setting up cameras and sound and all that. So that was really a process that took years and years. I've always had my camera with me when I was traveling, taking photos, doing like Instagram stories and stuff. And in the beginning, the quality wasn't great, but over time, I kind of learned how to use my equipment better and better. And now I'm actually working on building out a new studio for YouTube and for other projects. And that's going to be even a step up, I think. I'm sometimes worried whether it's going to get too professional. I don't want to. I think it's also nice when it kind of feels homemade. I think I'm not talented enough with cameras that it will always feel a little bit homemade. But yeah, I think. What was the other question again?
Yeah, just what percentage of maybe your audience do you think comes completely from outside, like just sort of stumbles into this world? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when you start reading the comments, I don't have any interest in wine, but I watched this video and I really liked it. Then your video is kind of going viral, or is going at least going to get good views. So those moments are nice when you kind of see your audience growing, people that hadn't had any interest in wine starting to get interested in wine. I mean, my most viral video when I opened a 159-year-old bottle of port, that was certainly a video where lots of people started to comment, "I'm Muslim. I don't drink any alcohol. Why is YouTube showing me this, and why do I like it?" So those moments are funny, and it's nice to reach a new audience. But I also really like building a stronger connection with the audience that I already have. So I think it's not always just about getting bigger, but also about forming a deeper relationship with the people that watch your video. And that was honestly the most amazing thing about this whole YouTube journey. I mean, I use social media quite a bit, and I'm one of the bigger. I have one of the bigger accounts in Germany for wine on Instagram, but no one ever kind of came up to me and said, "You changed my life," but because of Instagram. But with YouTube, it actually has happened that I mean, one of the most weird and amazing moments in my YouTube career was when I visited this winery in the Pfalz. The visit didn't have anything to do with YouTube, and all of a sudden there was this guy standing behind me. And, sometimes when someone else enters the room, the whole atmosphere changes. And I kind of looked over my shoulder, and there he was, like he's maybe, I don't know, 10 years younger than me. But yeah, a big grown man. And he was kind of like, I can't believe that you're here. It's so amazing. I've been watching your videos for over a year now. And I studied something completely different. And then I decided I don't want to do that anymore. I want to get into wine. And he kind of stopped his studies as an engineer somewhere in Munich, I believe it was, and kind of changed career paths completely and moved to the Pfalz and started working for this winemaker. And now it's his plan to make his own wine. I mean, I hope it's not just because of me that he did that, because if it doesn't go well, I don't want to take the blame either. But that's kind of amazing if you can reach people like in such a way that you really change their life, hopefully for the better, and get them excited about something that they weren't aware about before. So it's really great to form proper relationships with the audience, not just, grow it, basically.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like part of your ability to grow that relationship comes when you're tasting things like you're saying, who's the beginner who wants to watch a video on hybrids? But when you're watching that video, especially when you're looking at like the Polish bottle, it's very relatable to a lot of folks who pick up a wine bottle, maybe see one grape they recognize on the back, don't understand the rest of the wine label, and they're like, cool, like, a master of wine feels the same way I do. I think some of those are actually making it, content really approachable, and kind of, humanized a little bit.
I think it's important. Yeah, I do agree. I mean, it's not like I plan the accidents that happen when I try open bottles or anything like that. But I'm also quite happy to leave them in, because I think no one should think just because I'm a master of wine, I know everything about wine and I know how to do everything and everything is always perfect. I think that builds up this border for people to get more interested in wine, because they think I'm never going to be as interested in wine, so why bother starting with it? I'll never be able to do this or that with a bottle of wine, so why should I even try? And I mean, for me personally, it often happens that I come across grape varieties or wine growing regions where I don't know anything about them, and that's part of the excitement of wine, that it never stops, that you can always learn more. And I've had corks of bottles of Dom Perignon explode on me, and I messed up that bottle of 159-year-old port when I tried to open it using port tongs. So that kind of stuff happens. But I think that's also part of the fun of wine. I mean, just doing this kind of stuff, it's a cultural product. It's not always easy to handle, but you should always enjoy it, and you should kind of take it a little bit more lighthearted and not worry too much about it. I think that's really important. So I would never edit that kind of stuff out, because I feel like that's relevant too. And if I make a mistake, I think that's fine. You can make a mistake too. The master of wine makes lots of mistakes. So just kind of try and experiment with wine, and then at some point you figure it out.
I think that's great advice. How do you go about selecting your bottles? I know you had an intern for a while. I think his name was Leon. I know he picks some bottles for you. But how do you normally go about, like, when you're blind tasting? How are you you don't know what they are, obviously. How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, Leon still works for me, and he's going to work even more for me in April. He just finished his university studies, and now he's going to start a proper job at my company. So I'm looking forward to that. So he'll be around, and yeah, he usually picks the wines for me. I select a topic, and if I need to blind taste the wines, then he just picks them and sends them over, and someone backs them up. Oftentimes my wife backs them up, and then I taste them blind. So but sometimes if it's a topic where I need to know what the wines are, or where I want to know what the wines are, I select them and he orders them for me. But yeah, it's really important for me that we buy the wines in general, because it just makes it so there's obviously also the option of kind of asking suppliers or wineries to send bottles, but most of the time that's just a logistical hassle, and it takes much longer, and I'm in the position that I can afford to buy the wines, and that again helps me like stay independent from any major influences. I can just kind of riff about them because I bought them. So I'm a customer. I can complain if the product isn't right.
Yeah, and how do you think about carving out a niche in this space? Do you feel like, you want your content to be accessible to everyone, but you also, I would think that part of, growing the community around your channel, there has to be like a specific kind of niche, or like, what is the thesis of the project? Do you think about it that way, or is there another approach that you take to kind of trying to catch lightning in a bottle for that virality?
Yeah. I think it's first of all, it's dangerous to think of creating content based on whether it's going to go viral or not. I think it's much more important to produce quality content consistently. And I mean, like having a video that really hits is great, but it can also be a real problem, because all of a sudden your channel will be about that topic, and if you don't like that topic, then that can become a real issue. I mean, with like old wines, I like old wines. I always find it interesting to open an old bottle, especially if I don't really know what I should expect from it. And I think my audience likes that too. So that's fine. But I would also not. I wouldn't want my channel to become the old wine channel where I only open old bottles, and I think that would get boring quite quickly. And yeah, I don't really have a marketing plan, a content plan. Oftentimes it's really, so what am I going to do next week? If the wines have to be ordered, I usually batch it more. Like I send Leon a bunch of topics, and he orders the wines, and then I have enough for the next month. But then a new topic comes up, and I'll just kind of jump on it because I think that's interesting. There's very little topics in the wine world that are really time sensitive. It's not news. I mean, there are very few topics that are where you kind of have to jump on it. Otherwise, it will not be relevant anymore. But sometimes I just get excited about a topic, and I feel like, oh, that could be really cool. Or I'm sick. I got a cold, and I don't feel like blind tasting 6 wines and embarrassing myself. So I do a video where I don't taste wines and where I just talk about the topic. So that's the plan. I think my niche is hard to define, but I think, to be honest, on YouTube, wine on YouTube is just still a niche in and of itself. There are very few channels that are really successful with the topic. I think there are lots of channels that are available, or people who started creating something on wine. I think that's probably also due to the fact that one of the first social media influencers for some reason started off with a wine channel. I mean, Gary Vaynerchuk, he kind of got the ball rolling for lots of people to do something about wine on social media, but very few have succeeded so far. So my aim is really to make it about education, entertainment, and excellence. Just try to do everything as good as I can. Obviously, this is not a movie production with $1 million budget, so I have to stay within my bounds. But it's I try to do it as well as I can on a very consistent basis, and then it's going to be continuing to be around wine, about getting people excited about wine. I don't want to niche down any further and just kind of be the German wine channel or the champagne channel. I think that's maybe too small a niche, to be honest, at the moment. It's more about creating exciting content, getting people interested in wine. I definitely want to explore different topics that might be more relevant to a wider audience as well every now and then. Have something in there that might be more relatable to people who aren't deep into wine. But I also want to do really nerdy stuff where I go deep into a region that no one cares about, or taste wines that no one has ever heard of. And then I also what I do want to do more of in the future is kind of take people on the road with me. So travel to regions and try to incorporate that into my videos, not just being here in the studio or in the new studio, but also getting people into the regions, because, well, a lot of the magic of wine is really being there, experiencing different cultures, different places. And that's going to be a challenge because the format must change for that, and that doesn't always do so well on YouTube if you tinker around with the format. But I'm definitely going to do more of that because I wanna. Nice.
Yeah, I mean, that's very true. Being there changes things and really helps you appreciate things deeper. Are there particular regions that you've either been to recently or want to go to, or that you're just really excited about the wines that maybe people haven't heard of, or even if they have?
Yeah. I mean, certainly there are quite a lot of places that I really love. One place that I really wanted to go to last year was Georgia, and I did that. It was quite exciting. I mean, the cradle of wine, that's kind of their marketing tagline. One of the first places where they actually have, or probably the oldest place where they have archaeological evidence of winemaking taking place there. And that's obviously very interesting, especially because they are also still working or some of them at least, are working in a fairly archaic way, using amphoras buried into the soil, and they just dump all of the grapes in there with the skins, and then this weird and wonderful wine comes out. So that was certainly a place that I was really excited about going to. But I actually in the recent days and weeks, I actually got a few requests from Ukrainian winemakers and people who are in the industry over there, asking me to come and visit or taste their wines. And I think that would be a really exciting, very interesting topic to explore. There's so many unknown places where people get really excited about wine, where winemaking wasn't really possible 20, 40, 50 years ago, and that has changed in the recent past. And now you get great wines in the Netherlands, in Belgium, in the UK. So those places are also really exciting. But I do like the classics too, like Burgundy. Recently been to Burgundy again, and that's just, I mean, it kind of sometimes feels like the home of viticulture, even though it's not, but it's kind of so deeply rooted into their culture, and you are surrounded by those amazing sites that people in our circles know and love. So I like the diversity of it. I don't just want to kind of don't want to only go deep into one region. I want to explore.
Aside from sort of the typical topics, like you have videos on glassware and how to taste a wine, and sort of the basic entry level things that sort of every wine content creator needs to have. But you also have some videos maybe that are, for instance, germane to our business, like high-end wine collecting or investing, and certainly you have your background at Liv-ex. What's your perspective on the investment market, the secondary market for some of these fine wines from maybe Burgundy and Bordeaux and Champagne? Do you think it's a helpful space for some of these wines to be fetching $35,000 a bottle. How do you see your kind of content fitting into that story?
Yeah, I think well, when it comes to my YouTube channel and those wines, I think I'm more on the trying to demystify it all side of things. So I open those bottles on a fairly regular basis. I mean, not DRC, that's going to happen at some point, but all different kinds of fairly expensive wines. I've tasted on my channel, old ones, younger ones, and all that. And I think when it comes to these wines, it's kind of important to stay honest and tell the story, but also make people aware of the fact that they kind of make the occasion sometimes. So you open one of those bottles, and it's going to be a special dinner anyways. But it's not necessarily that they are 10 times better or 100 times better. So it doesn't really, the price quality ratio is slightly skewed when it comes to those wines. So it's not like the $1,000 wine is 10 times better than the $100 wine, or 100 times better than the $10 wine, you know. So I think that is how I approach it on my YouTube channel. But when it comes to those wines in other areas where I operate, is obviously I can see that this market is not going anywhere right now. So fine wine and the investment side kind of goes along with it. Has been performing fairly well with some dips and some highs over the last few years. But I think as the super rich who consume these wines don't seem to go anywhere, there's always also an interest in having these wines as status symbols, as something that to put away in your cellar. If you're able to consume the best of everything, meat, cars, or well, you don't consume cars, I guess, but you know what I mean. And then you also want to have the best wines in your cellars to go along with that. And I think there's nothing inherently wrong with that. And I also don't think that there's anything wrong about participating in the increase in value. So I actually, with my company, I work with two very, very fancy restaurants / hotels, and we do the wine list, the wine programs for them. And for them, it's obviously very important to have these wines on the list. And I always also try to factor in and make them aware of the fact that it can make sense to invest in some of these wines in their collections in order to make sure that their cellar value grows over time. And they be able to reap the profits in the future. But the problem with the fine wine market, in my opinion, still, and that hasn't changed much, I think, since the days when I worked at Liv-ex, is the logistics of it. So moving wine around, storing it. The whole settlement, clearing and settlement part of it is quite complicated when you compare it to buying stocks. You know, there was a time when you had certificates on stocks stored away somewhere, but now it's just all digital, and that no one really has to do much about when it comes to the settlement part. But when it comes to wine, it's much more complicated. There's more fraud there as well. So you really want to make sure that that you work with the right sources, source your wines from the right places, store it properly, and you also have to factor all that cost into the investment. So you can see the curve, the value of the wine increasing, but what is often missing is the cost of getting it there, like the cost of storage, and also the cost of selling it on to someone else once you want to cash in on the profits. So it's more complicated, but I actually do like it, and I'm certainly I won't, my retirement won't entirely depend on wine, but I'll have some cases stored away at the end of my career that I'm looking to sell, well, in order to kind of finance the calmer times of my life. So I think it can be a sensible investment as long as it's part of a portfolio of things.
Yeah, I think that was kind of the thesis, at least the difficulty piece that our founders kind of recognized, and that's kind of why Vint developed the way we did, is basically want to give access to people to be able to invest in those shares or securities here in the U.S. Rather than having to manage the whole process themselves. So I think that makes a lot of sense and resonates with us.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to go back and touch on was the climate change piece that you referenced earlier. It is true that they're able to grow more wine in more places. I'd love to, you just did a video on English sparkling. I would love to get your perspective there. But how do you think the climate change is going to impact the traditional expressions of wines from, say, Burgundy or Moselle or Bordeaux?
Yeah, it has changed a lot. And I think there are very few people in the wine business, especially grape growers, who deny climate change, because the beauty of wine is not just that it tastes great, but also that you can kind of go back in time through consuming it. So a grape grower or winemaker can go into the cellar and pick up a bottle that his father made, or maybe even his grandfather made, and then put it next to the bottle from the same vineyard that he made last year. So the comparison is more easy than when it comes to wheat or whatever agricultural product. So there's actually a far easier comparison, and I think the comparison, even when I look back at the beginning of my wine career, which isn't that long ago, but the wine styles in Bordeaux, in Burgundy, in Germany have changed quite a lot. So the alcohol levels have increased. I actually just yesterday did a survey on YouTube, and I kind of described the wine, and my audience was supposed to identify it and select one of the options. And there was a comment like, because I wrote it has 12.5% of alcohol. And it was actually a 2001 Léoville Baton. So he wrote, well, 12.5% alcohol, that can't be Bordeaux, so it must be something else, But back when I started, 12.5% of alcohol, that was like the classic alcohol level when it comes to Bordeaux. But nowadays it's not anymore. And when you talk about Germany, I mean, German Pinots, they oftentimes have like 14% alcohol now, whereas back in the days, it was nice to harvest a Pinot and make it into like a 12% red wine, or kind of red wine, not real red wine, not dark red wine. So things have changed certainly, and that will obviously that has some benefits. I think Germany as a whole, when it comes to winemaking, has really benefited from it so far. So the quality of the wines is much higher. There's much more consistent quality when it comes to the vintages, compared to like the 50s and 60s, where there were really periods in Germany where you harvested green grapes, like grapes that weren't ripe, and tried to make like some kind of wine out of it. And that has changed completely. That doesn't exist anymore. But now winemakers obviously have to think about irrigation, something that wasn't an issue in Germany before, but now it's becoming an issue. They have to also reshuffle the cru system, basically. So some vineyards were selected as the best in Germany, or in any region really, because they were the ones that ripened grapes most consistently. So you were able to harvest good fruit every year or most years from certain sites, and that made them the Grand Cru sites or the Gros Gewächs sites. And now those sites sometimes can be too hot. So places where you were growing Chardonnay for centuries in Burgundy, and now produce like these 14.5% Chardonnays that just don't feel like that, or don't taste that great anymore. They're just too big. So that will certainly change some things. So sites that were too cold in the past might not now be perfect, whereas sites that were just perfect are now maybe a little bit too hot. But you can still do lots of things in the vineyard, like planting the vines in different directions, having the rows different, get more shading on the grapes so that they don't ripen as quickly. There are lots of things that winemakers can play around with in order to combat that. There are even factors that people don't necessarily think about when it comes to the CO2 levels in the air. So in Geisenheim, there's a long-term trial running where they kind of artificially changed the composition of the air in a vineyard plot outside, obviously. And they've noticed that they get more rot because the grapes get bigger, and therefore there's increased disease pressure. There's some certain insects that develop more rapidly and cause problems. So there's a whole lot of things that will change over the next few decades, and people just have to stay updated and change things. React to more weird situations in the vineyard. So it's going to be a challenge. But yeah, places like in Northern Europe, they will all of a sudden make decent wines. I mean, the English sparkling wines that I've tasted, they were really impressive. They beat the champagnes in a blind tasting. So I think that kind of shows you where things are going when it comes to sparkling wine in England. But yeah, maybe Denmark or Sweden might be able to produce some really nice wines in the future too.
Yeah, something that sort of is tangentially related to that is that I wanted to ask you about is the perception of German wines. It seems that in the wine world, certainly these wines are held up as being extremely quality, some of the best to age as well. But then kind of in the broader consumer market, and even we see this in the investment market, sort of undervaluing those wines relative to some of the other regions that we've already discussed. What's kind of your perspective on the trajectory of these German wines, both in the consumer and in the investor market? Because we know in the wine space that they're, can be incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a period when the wines from Germany were actually selling at higher prices than the best wines from Bordeaux or Burgundy. I mean, if you go to the Moselle, you just have to talk to a winemaker and they will get out like old wine lists from fancy restaurants in Paris from the beginning of the 20th century, where the whatever wine from the Moselle was more expensive than Chateau Latour. So I think those things come and go in cycles. I think the style of wines that Germany can produce, where we have our unique selling proposition, they are the sweet wines. So like the off-dry to sweet wines, cabinets with like 50 grams of residual sugar that don't taste sweet at all, to ice wines and Trockenbeerenauslese that are really sweet. And they are pretty unique. I mean, there's some other places that can do it, but very few. And that style of wine isn't necessarily performing really well. It's the same for Sauterne. I mean, like all of the producers the producers of classified growth red wines, they make a lot of money, and the guys in Sauterne have more work and make less money. So they don't get to sell their crop every year. So I think that certainly plays a role there. The other thing is, I mean, when it comes to Riesling, I think Riesling will always be tricky. I mean, it's our most important grape variety. It's wine nerds agree that it's one or the best white grape variety in the world, depending on who you ask. But it's not necessarily a grape variety that everyone likes. I mean, the high acidity is challenging for some. It's also sometimes difficult to understand what's in the bottle, but that's more for a wine labeling issue that we have in Germany. But I think actually German Pinots, they represent an interesting opportunity because prices have increased quite a bit over the last 10 years. There are more and more German producers now that make Pinots that sell for over €100 a bottle. That didn't exist like 10 years ago. There are some that even have like cold status, like Keller, for example. So there are certainly more to come. I believe the quality can be really, really high. There are amazing Pinots coming out of Germany, and I think that's probably the category that I would focus on more when it comes to investing in German wines. That I think that will develop quite well over the next decade or so.
Yeah, I think to your point on the
drink
Pinots,
the Riesling, you know.
You don't have to tell me twice to drink a good German Riesling or any German Riesling. On the Spätlese side of the, or not the Spätlese side, the Spätburgunder side of things, the German Pinot Noirs. That's really interesting you said that. In preparation for this, I was thinking back to an interview I listened to with Terry Thies when I was first studying. I did the couple levels of the sommelier program before WSET, and I was studying for my first exam, really knew nothing about wine, and he was talking about how he introduced German Riesling to the United States and some work, and then he was talking about, and this, I was listening to this probably 6 years ago, and it was probably recorded 5 years before that maybe, so it's probably 10 plus years old, and he was saying how keep a lookout for German Pinot Noirs, and he was even saying one producer at that time was trading barrels with DRC, and actually trading for like a barrel of Romani Conti for his wines. And this is funny enough back at the time where I was like, why did he just say that producer's name twice? And when he said Romani Conti twice, I was like, what is this guy talking about? Now, years later, I'm like, wow, that means that was a really good Pinot Noir that he was trading. But yeah, that's interesting.
I think that's probably the segment of the market that is the most exciting. Well, but we'll see. I mean, that's the beauty of investment. Everyone has a strong opinion, but no one really knows. So maybe something else will go off, or Pinot from Germany will not become the next big thing. But the quality is certainly there. I mean, there's great wines. There's some great wines coming out of Germany made from Pinot.
As a wine nerd, I'm torn between trying to force Americans to understand what Spätburgunder, I'm sure a lot of people here say Spätburgunder, or if we just bite the bullet and put Pinot Noir or something they'll understand on the label, so they'll at least try it and then ease them in that way. But I don't know.
Yeah, winemakers in Germany, some of them put Pinot Noir on the label. I think it's easier to understand. Spätburgunder is quite a mouthful. I think one thing that is really holding back German wines is the labels, the names. They tend to be too long and too complicated, and no one really understands them. Even for Germans, it can be sometimes difficult to really understand our wine law. So it's a bit challenging. And I think, well, make it as approachable as possible. Pinot Noir is definitely correct. It's the right grape variety, and I wouldn't. Me personally, I wouldn't insist on calling it Spätburgunder.
And some of this kind of knack for finding maybe hidden wines that are under the radar, that certainly plays a factor in your selections with Baum Selections, your retail kind of business. Just wanted to give you a little bit of time to talk a little bit about that. And is that mainly customer facing in Germany, or sort of where? Who's your customer for that side of your business, and kind of what's the approach and thought process as you grow that?
Yeah, so Baum Selection was actually my first business. Lots of people who follow me on YouTube don't really know about it because I don't really talk about it there. I'm trying to keep that very separate from my content, and I don't really taste wines from my own selection in my videos because I think that always feels kind of weird. So Baum Selection is an 100% online retail business, and we've now opened it up to all of the European Union. So we ship to every market that is within the European Union. I think it's actually easier in Europe, in the European Union, to ship something from one country to another than it might be to ship wine from one state in the US to another. It's definitely quite easy. The only difference is the cost of shipping, but that's also not a huge difference. So yeah, I basically, I mean, I obviously travel a lot, and I taste a lot of wines, and I always look for things that are exciting and new. For me personally, it's not so important that I have like the right mix of grape varieties or regions. It's more about the process of finding new stuff, new wines that are exciting, that appeal to my audience. Most of it is basically newsletter based, so I send out a newsletter once or twice a week, and people buy based on that. So most of the people that follow me around, they can trust my palate enough so that they purchase like a case or maybe even just a bottle, but oftentimes it's more than that, of a wine based on what I tell them about it. So the story always plays an important role as well. Obviously not some kind of made up story, but a story that describes the wine well is something quite powerful, I think. I think the great retailers, when it comes to wine, they really understand that. It's like a Kermit Lynch or people like that. They really understand that story is important in wine. So I basically always try to find hidden gems, wines that aren't well known, so not famous estates or anything like that, but producers that make really great wine. And I have the ability to see past the fact that they might not have a fancy winery or that the region is virtually unknown, because I focus on my nose and my palate, and that's how I pick the wines. And then usually I get exclusive distribution, at least in some markets, for those wines, and then people can buy them through the website, and that's it. It's a pretty stripped down, really easy model. I always liked John Rimmerman's approach from the US. I don't know whether you know him, but he has this site called Garagiste. He's actually also a great storyteller. So I think sometimes us in the wine world, we make things a little bit too complicated. Sometimes I think it's quite nice to focus on certain aspects, because there's enough wine in any market pretty much anyways. So you gotta find your own approach to it and kind of build your own niche, a little bit like what I do on YouTube. I also just try to do something that no one else does, or few people do. Try to do it as good as possible, as well as possible, and that is, well, I think we are next year we have our 10th anniversary, so we've been around for a bit at least now to call ourselves a company.
Congrats. Yeah, I think it was Kermit Lynch who has the quote, "The more you know about a wine, the more you will enjoy it, regardless of how it tastes." So I think the storytelling and learning about it is really important. Speaking of lesser known, I browsed through some of your selection. I noticed there was some from the Rhone. Do you have, we're going off the main wine route. We're going to be going down to like Provence in May, mainly because my partner really wants to see lavender, if there will be any at that time of year. But outside of, like, speaking of Kermit Lynch, like Domaine Tempier and Bandal, do you have any secret things in the Côte de Rhône, or what people should be looking for?
Well, in the Côte de Rhône, I really like Domaine de la Graverette. I have some wines from them. They actually produce amazing, very easy vin de France as well, called jus de vie rouge and blanc, so red and white, which is a great bargain in my opinion. But they also have great Chateauneufs. When you go further down, one of my favorite wines that is actually not in stock right now, but it's going to come back, is Clos-Chibonne Thibaut. It's a little producer in the Provence who actually just works with the grape, or pretty much just works with the grape variety Thibaut, which is a grape variety that isn't really planted much at all anymore. I think he has the biggest share, he has more than 50% of all of the Thibaut vines in the world planted in his vineyards. But he makes really amazing rosé wines from that grape variety, and the beauty of it is they actually age really well. So rosé wines tend to be consumed pretty early, and part of that is because people make it in a way that it's approachable when young, but not necessarily great after 5 to 10 years of aging. And he's actually making rosés that can stand the test of time, like that age for 10, 20 years. They are fun in the beginning as well, but they are also really good after 10 years. So a pretty serious rosé, but it's a real beauty. So you should definitely check that out.
Nice, will do.
That's awesome. Yeah, thanks so much for the time today. Obviously sharing about your YouTube and the following that you have there is really exciting for us, because we want to see wine, get to more people as well. And we think that you're a great ambassador for it. And we appreciate the kind of perspective that you have on the markets broadly and on investments, and sort of that we, have a similar mindset in terms of the value of some of these wines and the experiences that come along with them. So yeah, we really appreciate you joining us today, and hope that we can stay in touch, and I hope that your audience benefits from this interview, and hopefully maybe gain to see a different side of the way that you present yourself than on your YouTube. So yeah, thanks for having you.
Thanks a lot for having me. That was a lot of fun. I even forgot to open a bottle of wine and have a glass, but I'll do that now. I guess it's the evening over here in Germany.
We'll do that next time.
All right.
Yeah, thanks so much. We'll talk to you soon. Okay.
Yeah. Bye. Thank you.
All right, that was our interview with Konstantin Baum, and that is our third co-host, Cam, Brady's dog. But a couple pieces from the episode, you might have noticed we used a couple German terms in the podcast. So I just wanted to run through quickly the levels of German wine. So you may see a Riesling labeled either Kabinett, Spätlese, Auslese, Trockenbier, and Auslese, and then there's ice wine. These are basically measures of the potential sugar. They call it must weight, or Uxla, that is in the wine. So it basically dictates how much sugar is in the grapes when they were harvested. To some, that's a degree of ripeness. To others, it's just kind of a measure of potential alcohol. So Kabinett has the lowest, Spätlese has next level, Auslese, and then Trockenbier and Auslese, they have their different levels of sugar. So that's why sometimes you'll get a Kabinett. They could be more dry. Sometimes they're made in a slightly off dry style, but then they tend to get sweeter as they go up, just to balance the to make it properly alcohol and acid balance. The other element we talked about was Spätburgunder, which is the German term for Pinot Noir. If you guys ever see it, it's kind of like SPATBURGUNDER with like two little dots over the A at the beginning. Definitely worth checking those out, and don't be intimidated by their name. Something you might also see is Grauburgunder, which is Pinot Gris in German. Also buy those. They're also really good. So yeah, just definitely go check out German wines. Go check out Konstantin, and stay tuned for our upcoming collections. Cheers.
To check out our current offerings and to sign up for the Vint platform, find us at www.vint.co. That's www.vint.co. For questions, comments, or feedback on the Vint podcast, please email us at support@vint.co. Vint and VV Markets are offering securities pursuant to Regulation A. Our offering circular as amended can be found on the SEC website. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. Investments such as those on the Vint platform are speculative and involve substantial risks to consider before investing. We may provide communication that may contain certain forward-looking statements that are subject to various risks and uncertainties. Information provided in any communications, including this podcast, is not legal, business, or tax advice. All prospective investors should consult a legal, tax, or business advisor concerning the subject matter of any communications and any offering.